for the first time in history, the United States and Israel are initiating a war together. Is this working out? What are the war aims? Are they going to succeed? All that and more coming up on Israel Update. Israel Update with Gatty Tao and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. You may be surprised to see us. You may also be surprised to know that I'm Gadi Taub in Tel Aviv, and that with me is Dr. Mike Duran in an undisclosed location. Shalom, Mike.
Shalom. Don't I get a title?
No, it's wartime. You don't get a title and you don't have a tie. It's the war room atmosphere on the Bannon style. That's not a very good way to start a podcast with Bannon, is it? Where are you, Mike?
I'm. If you must know, I'm in Miami.
Why?
If you really want to know,
I do.
I'm not just in Miami. I'm in Coconut Grove.
Is that a rich suburb of Miami?
Yeah. I mean, it's a trendy place to be. I mean, this shows what kind of person I am.
Or what kind of person you are becoming.
Yeah, let me show you this.
Star had risen. I used to know a lot about Miami because I read this book by one of the best anthropologists of the United States, Tom Wolfe. I think it was called Back to Blood. It's not one of his best novels. It's still very good, and it's good as anthropology, not exactly as literature, because Tom Wolfe believes there's only one human motivation, and that's climbing up the social ladder. But how about we start with a war, because a war is going on all around us. So, Mike, this is a very exciting moment. Before we even move to the bulletin, I just mentioned it briefly in the introduction, but did you ever imagine that in your lifetime the United States and Israel would go to war together?
I imagined it, but I thought it was in the realm of imagination, because I believe that the United States and Israel are natural allies. I believe Israel is America's best ally, and I've always wanted them to get closer and work together. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I always thought that all of the political impediments to that would prevent it. But it took Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. They found a way. It's remarkable.
Amazing. And let's hope it also succeeds, because a lot depends on that. So what do we have on the headlines today?
We have on the headlines today, I have 5 main items and then a few other thoughts. So first, as you mentioned, Israel and the United States launched a joint assault on Iran. The Israelis are calling it Operation Roaring Lion, and the Americans are calling it Epic Fury. It's like, you can't help but laugh at that. The opening attack surprised the Iranians, and it killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, but also former President Ahmadinejad and dozens of other top officials. More on that later, Gadi. Prime Minister Netanyahu hailed it as ending an existential threat. He urged Iranians to, quote, cast off the yoke of tyranny. President Trump confirmed Khamenei's death, and he declared it justice for Iranians. The Allies targeted sites to create the conditions for regime change. I chose those words carefully. We'll talk about that more later. To create the conditions for regime change. Iranian state media has announced 40 days of mourning, with an interim council forming amid vows of revenge. Second, Gadi, ongoing U.S.-Israeli airstrikes have hit over 500 targets in Iran, focusing on air defenses, missile launchers, and command centers. The Israeli Air Force is conducting 3 sorties per pilot per day in order to condense operation into days, not weeks. A senior Israeli official revealed a pre-strike ruse that lured some 30 Iranian leaders into vulnerable spots, saying, quote, the objective is to create the conditions for the fall of the regime. President Trump emphasized strikes will persist until Iran's nuclear program is shut down, terror funding ends. He warned a show of force, quote, never seen before. Third, Iran has retaliated with massive missile and drone barrages targeting Israel, U.S. bases, and Arab Gulf states. It's killed at least 10 people in Israel, including a woman in Tel Aviv and 9 people in Beit Shemesh. It's damaged the Dubai's airport, the Burj Al Arab Hotel. Sorry, I lost my place here a little bit.
That's not the Burj Khalifa. That's
No, something else. I lost my cursor, jumped here. Sorry about that. IDF air defenses intercepted most projectiles, but failures are under investigation. Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir stated, we will continue to strike in Iran's ballistic missile arsenal. The attacks have shuttered schools and businesses across Israel, stranding citizens abroad amid pro-Iran protests globally. Pro and anti-Iran protests. Fourth, regional fallout intensifies. Neighbors like Saudi Arabia, sorry, Ghadi, I made a hash of this one. Regional fallout intensifies as Iran attacks neighbors like Saudi Arabia and summons ambassadors. Experts are warning in Europe and in the United States as well, are warning of no legal basis for the U.S.-led war. In the UN Security Council is full of calls for restraint. Netanyahu noted that the alliance with America is at a, quote, unprecedented peak, unquote, in military terms. Fifth, the latest from the American and Israeli press. Ghadi, I just do a little roundup here very, very quickly. The New York Times says that Iran vows to avenge Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's death. The CIA has tracked Khamenei for months, and it helped pinpoint his location, although it was the Israeli strike that killed him. And the New York Times editorial board slams the attack as, quote, reckless and unconstitutional, unquote, arguing that Trump started a war without congressional approval or clear strategy, violating the Constitution's war powers. From the Wall Street Journal, we have a report saying that half of Iran's missile launchers destroyed in the first 2 days of the strikes. Revolutionary Guard is facing an existential threat following Khamenei's death. And interestingly, Ghadi, from the Washington Post, there's a report saying that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman privately urged Trump to strike Iran in multiple calls over the last few months. The Washington Post is saying that he played a crucial role in convincing Trump that this is the right way to go. This is a surprise because all of the news said that Saudi Arabia was counseling restraint. And finally, Ghadi, this one is for you. I couldn't not mention this. Well, let me just ask you, Ghadi, if you were the left-wing Israeli press and you have unprecedented cooperation between the United States and Israel against an existential threat to Israel, how do you spin it so that it's not such a good thing?
And Netanyahu and Trump heading into a quagmire without clear goals.
That's what the American press is saying. No, the American left press. But here's Nahum Barnea, quote, Israel has received Trump on steroids, but it is losing America along the way.
Nahum Barnea is is considered here a very serious analyst. In actuality, he runs a rechilut, a gossip column of politics, with a minimal understanding of politics or geopolitics, and the whole Israeli press is all oriented towards its hatred for Netanyahu. And I just asked one of them who tweeted mockingly that how many wars have gone wrong and why are we so happy at the beginning when we don't know how it would end. So I asked him, what is more important to him, Israel winning or Netanyahu losing? And this sounds like a joke, but it is not a joke. it is not a joke, and I will show one of my cards for the dumbest take now, because this has been forced on me. Amir Oren, one of the
I know Amir, yeah.
a member of the editorial board of Haaretz, said of the last war, Iron Swords, what is the picture of success? Anything that is a loss for Netanyahu. This is a supposedly respectable newspaper. My new slogan, Mike, is very politically incorrect, and everything I quote from Haaretz, I add, Haaretz זה עיתון למפגרים. How would you translate it without wrenching the ears of our listeners?
Well, they can handle it. A newspaper for retards.
Exactly. It's like it's so childish and stupid. I'll have a few examples.
Drew Clavin, with Drew Clavin, whenever he mentions the New York Times, he calls it a former newspaper.
Yeah, I know. I adopted that. I adopted that about the New York Times, and I quote Clavin.
Why don't you say to Lawrence, he totally share about?
You did. Before we move to analysis, I couldn't help while you were enumerating the news items to refer to the Babylon Bee, but we'll do that a little later. So first things first, where are we at this moment, in your opinion, or better yet, what is the strategy from the unfolding events? What do you gather about the strategy?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I wrote an article about the strategy, which I published in the Free Press. Did you get a chance to read that?
You sent it to me 1 hour before recording, when I was supposed to get ready for this recording. So ChatGPT and I have gone through it very thoroughly.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to send it to you. The strategy is, I think of it as Trump walking a line between Obama and George W. Bush. You think about it this way, and this is not what I wrote in the article, but think about it this way: that Ali Khamenei was trying to turn Trump into Obama. He wanted to sell Trump on another a JCPOA type deal that would preserve Iran's enrichment capabilities and preserve its easy escalation toward a bomb whenever it wanted to. In order to have the bomb option, to easy access to the bomb, but also to keep the pressure, to use it as a way of pressuring and deterring the West. Trump famously campaigned in 2016 against the JCPOA, calling it the dumbest deal ever, dumbest deal in history. So Trump can't go back to a JCPOA style deal. On the other hand, he also campaigned in 2016 against George W. Bush and said that George W. Bush's Iraq war was the dumbest war in history. So he can't carry out. It's hard for him, not just because he has attacked Bush in the past, but a part of his base also doesn't want to see an American ground operation or the United States creating a huge mess, as it did in Libya, for example, as it's perceived to have done in Libya. Let's put it that way. So Trump wants stability. But he wants major behavior change by the Iranians, the kind of behavior change that a simple negotiation with the elite, even coercion under pressure, is not going to produce. So this leads us, if we're between those two positions of not being Obama and not being George W. Bush, then what we're looking at is a war that is aiming at regime transformation. And so they are taking out, systematically decapitating the elite in the regime, and they're hoping that they're taking out the elite on the one hand, and they are inciting the population to rise up on the other hand. And they're hoping that if they put the what's left of the state between the hammer of popular protest and the anvil of American and Israeli attacks on the elite, on the upper echelons of the regime, they can actually transform the regime. So the strategy is actually regime transformation, is what
rather than regime change.
Yes, and the model is Milosevic in 1999. That's where we changed the government through air power. 78 days of dropping bombs on them, by the way. So there is a precedent. This has been done before. The question is,
but the government and not the regime. So you would
yes. Well, I would say the government and not the state. They don't want to destroy all state structures.
So let me just try and clarify. Is this going to be the Islamic Republic in a new version, or is the Islamic Republic going to go down and open the possibility of a republic or a monarchy to come in its stead?
I think we don't know. Simple answer is we don't know. We don't. Once this thing starts evolving, it's not clear how it will evolve. But you could imagine they could hold elections, you know, and Iran has an electoral system. It's just that the results of the elections are kind of kabuki. The supreme leader always decides who can be the candidates, and the elected official, the president, doesn't have any power. So if you shifted it a little bit, and the president actually had some power, and held elections, well, I mean, first of all, you need an interim government. Who's going to be in the interim government, and then it has to define its path forward, which it will do, like the remnant of the Maduro regime is doing in Venezuela, you know, in intense negotiations with the United States. So exactly where that's all going to end up, it's not clear. One thing is clear, I mentioned it in my Free Press article, which is called Trump's Decapitation Strategy, for those of you who are subscribers to Free Press. I talked to a very, very reliable and well-informed source who told me that there is a plan for the day after, and things are looking pretty good. So that's kind of interesting. So when the New York Times says there's no strategy, that's not true. There is a strategy.
The Israeli media is full of the "there is no strategy" argument parodies, because all through the Iron Swords War and the whole sweep of the war that basically destroyed the Iranian axis in the Middle East, the pundits on the right who are now leading in humor kept saying, well, what is the strategy? You know, Hezbollah was destroyed. What is the strategy? Syria fell. What is the strategy? Iran lost their nuclear. What is the strategy? And so that question has really grown old. But let me try and map the possibilities after I mentioned that if this is going to succeed, it will be, I'll put it this way: believers will be strengthened in their beliefs that for the second time, Purim, the exact same date, Haman HaRasha of the Purim Megillah has been destroyed, and Israel is going to be salvaged or saved yet again from those who are in every generation out to destroy us. So
who's Esther in this story?
I didn't think of that. Obviously, it's not Shikma Bresler, who's fuming, by the way. The whole left feed is just fuming about this war.
I don't read. What is Shikma Bresler saying?
I forget that we are. one of their funniest takes, and I don't know if it's her, and I won't be able to just dig it up since I dug up my own tweet to quote myself, but let me try and get Shikma Bressler too. One of their unbelievable takes is it was in Haaretz, as you mentioned, a newspaper for the retard. They said, Israel, listen to this, because Tucker Carlson would just love it. He would just love it. Just send it to Tucker Carlson. The headline in Haaretz said, Israel is once again being dragged into an American war. Unbelievable. Some of the Israeli press is just because their whole orientation is they're not reporting news. They're spinning events in the way that they think would hurt Netanyahu most. So this is their profession for a long time, and they've completely lost touch with reality. But we have not, and this is why we have Israel Update. So while I was anticipating your article, curious to read what you said, I tried to map the possibility or the possible outcomes of the war. I'm not going to elaborate. Let me put on the table 6 possibilities, and then you can put them under your microscope and look at them in geopolitical terms. One is that is very unlikely. I called it Hissardut, survival, that the Islamic Republic will manage to weather the storm and stay more or less in its proper form, in its current form, with different persons at the helms. I said this was unlikely. Second option is reform, that the Islamic Republic would reform itself, by which I mean it would create the impression of taking a new direction, but but it will continue to pursue its plans for uranium enrichment and its anti-Western orientation. I call that false reform. Then I said real reform, a reform that will change the direction of the end policy, give up the nuclear program, but not give up completely the long-term and the theological orientation of the Islamic Republic. That is, he would pretend to become a more responsible player on the international scene, while deferring to an unknown future its ideology. We've seen such things happen. We've seen this, for instance, with China, which was extremely ideological under Mao Zedong for most of his life, but beginning with 72, has kept the ideological orientation as a distant lodestar, but behaved pragmatically on the scene. So that's the third option. The fourth option is, I think, what Trump and Netanyahu are aiming for, and I would call it regime change, more bluntly than you did. And this is a complete collapse of the Islamic Republic, to be replaced either by a restoration of the Pahlavi monarchy or by a new form of a republic. Option number 5, quagmire, is that the right thing? I wrote it in Hebrew, histabchut. Things will get tangled, complicated, and would be dragged into a ground war, the last thing that Trump wants on the model of Iraq or Afghanistan, with no end in sight. And 6, also unlikely because of the risk of 5, occupation. An occupation of Iran by ground forces, American, Israeli, international, whatever, who will force a regime change. So I think this is the range of possible options. Am I missing something?
Yeah, I think you can collapse a few of those into one. And some of the distinctions you made at the beginning between fake reform and so on, there's basically the way I see the options, they are, well, let's just say the one that's missing. So there's one missing, I think, which is civil war. so that like Syria. There's a chance that Iran could become the new Syria. Fragmentation internally, a number of different militias with ethnic and religious backgrounds, supported by outside actors. That could actually happen. I wouldn't put that. I wouldn't put that very high on the list, but it's enough to be a realistic possibility. We don't know what's going to happen internally. There will not be an American ground war. That will not happen. I put that at 0. Trump won't do that under any conditions. There could be a Turkish or Azerbaijani intervention, though. There could be a Pakistani intervention as well.
So two more options.
Yeah, I mean, but they kind of collapse into each other. I mean, if the Turks and the Azerbaijanis are only going to intervene if there's a civil war. So I think it's like civil war with outside actors playing a role, just like Syria. I mean, that's Syria is the model. I disagree. I have a disagreement with you. You said you think Trump and Netanyahu want a total regime change. I don't think they want that. I mean, Netanyahu might dream about it, but the key question, the key player here is Donald Trump, because he determines the strategy of the coalition.
Why do you say you disagree with me when I raised this point and said I disagree with you? I said, as opposed to what you say, I think they're aiming for regime change.
Oh, right. No. Yeah, I disagree with you. Yeah, they're not. Donald Trump doesn't want regime change. He wants regime.
You ever on a Pahlavi monarchy?
I don't know what Donald Trump thinks about the Pahlavi monarchy, but I think it's a non-starter. It's not going to happen because for 3 reasons. Number one, the IRGC isn't just the terrorist military of Iran.
The Revolutionary Guard, yeah.
Yeah, the Revolutionary Guard. It also runs the economy. So it's very hard to reform this thing. I think you have to look for a model of the Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. It's what happened is the KGB took over. It called itself something new. It's the FSB. Look who's running Russia, former KGB agent. So the real power in the country is the IRGC. It has control of all the economic levers. If you brought in Pahlavi as an interim figure, he will either be totally controlled by these guys, killed, or immediately exiled. That's one reason. Second reason, I just don't think he personally is the guy for the job. He has spent his adult life in Potomac, and living a suburban American life. Fate made him the son of the Shah, and so he is all of the aspirations of the monarchists focus on him. But there's nothing about his personality and experience that suggests that he's actually the right guy for the job. Also, the Iranians have been very effective at killing anyone who could possibly be a symbol of opposition to them. So, for want of an alternative, people's aspirations focus on Reza Pahlavi, but he doesn't have it. But finally, one of the most important reasons in my mind is that Reza Pahlavi is a symbol to all of the minority groups of Persian fascist domination of the minorities. People are the Shah, the Pahlavi monarchy killed a lot of Kurds. It killed a lot of Azerbaijanis as well, by the way, but it killed especially a lot of Kurds, a lot of Arabs. People don't forget. And it doesn't matter how well-intentioned or nice a good character a man Reza Pahlavi is, he represents that to the minorities. And a lot of people are not aware of this. The monarchists don't want you to know this, and they deny it. And all of the Iran expertise in America, when I say all, I mean all, and the universities, in the think tanks, and in the intelligence services is either made up of Persian monarchists themselves or people who are closely associated with it and trained by them. And in those circles, if you even start to talk about the ethnic question, you get shouted down and you're told that you're counterproductive and that you don't know what you're talking about and so on. It's a taboo subject. But he's a non-starter. He could play. There's a role for him to play. By the way, he's not playing it. He should be pulling together all the opposition groups and putting together some ideas for where a united Iran could go, and he hasn't done it. I wrote an article, by the way, I don't know if I sent it to you, in the Washington Post about the ethnic question in Iran. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I didn't send it to you. I'll send it to you. It's the key question is, yeah, we talked about it here. We talked about it. Is
The less we broadcast, the less I get to read your oeuvre, Mike.
you should be on top of my oeuvre now, completely. This should be. I'm a little bit hurt. I'm a little bit hurt, but we'll talk about my emotions.
I have the first 3 leather bound volumes, but I'm missing on the current stuff.
But we talked about it here. The key question is Iran a multi-ethnic nation like Britain, with the Persians playing the role of the English and providing the basis for the culture of the multi-ethnic, the lingua franca, I don't know what to call it, of the multi-ethnic.
I remember because I said it's an illusion even in Britain, and it's more and it would be more complicated by far in Persia. So I think the term nation is not a good one. I think we should best Persian nation and an Iranian citizenry.
But there is a British nation. I mean, that makes sense, actually.
No,
there is.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'm biased because I come from Israel, and people who are critical of the idea of a Jewish state want to say that there is an Israeli nation. There was a big row here about Lucy Harish. Maybe I should open parentheses and tell this story. Lucy Harish is an Arab broadcaster on Channel 13, the leftist Channel 13, and after the left has been harassing politicians, journalists, pundits, activists on the right by, blocking their entrances to their own homes and stopping their cars. And there's one Israeli who does this to the left, and the left goes screaming that the order is collapsing. His name is Mordechai David, and he demonstrated outside the house of Lucy Harish, and Lucy Harish came with that monologue about how she about Israeli racism, and about how she hopes the Arabs would vote in droves in this election. Now, this is a very controversial thing because the Arab parties, not necessarily like the whole Arab population of Israel, are very, very anti-Zionist. They're against the idea of the Jewish state, and she ended her monologue with Inshallah. Then people reminded her that when she was interviewed, she's married to an actor, an Israeli actor, a very good actor, Tzachi. Israeli Jewish actor, yeah, and I forgot his name, Tzachi. That's embarrassing. I'll look it up in a minute. And there's a monologue recorded on video of her as a younger woman saying she would never marry a Muslim because he can be nice, in the first years, but then what will she do if he starts beating her up the next year? So she is a Judaized Arab, and now she came out against the Israeli fears of the growth of the Arab parties, and this became an issue of contention. And why am I mentioning this in this context, because when Lucy Harish, I commented about this in Hebrew, when Lucy Harish gave her speech against racism and for more Arab participation in the Israeli democracy, what she did is not just say a minority is going to participate, but what she was outlining, or what was understood that she was getting at, is the renouncing of the idea of a Jewish state in favor of an Israeli nation that would include Arabs and Jews and be a new identity. And the truth is that nobody in Israel, or almost nobody with the exception of some post-colonial intellectuals who call themselves Jewish Arabs, nobody in Israel thinks of themselves as not one of these, is a Jewish or Arab. Neither the Arabs nor the Jews are willing to give up their ethnic national identity for an invented identity called an Israeli nation. So there is no Israeli nation. There is a Jewish nation. There is arguably an Arab nation or a Palestinian nation, but there is no Israeli nation. There is only Israeli citizenship. And why is this so confusing to Americans? Because Americans also think that American is just their citizenship, while they belong to all these ethnic groups. Mike, you, for instance, are famously Irish American. There are Italian Americans, Jewish American, African Americans, Catholic Americans, many categories, racial, national, religious, and other stuff. But the truth is that in America, the strong thing is the American identity. All these people are subcategories of American, while in Israel, the two groups want to preserve their distinction. They want to preserve their separate culture. They're not willing to merge this into a common culture as Americans do. And so the question is, where is Iran on that scale? On the far side of American, where Iranian is the dominant identity and the rest is a subgroup or folklore, or is it like Israel, where Iranian is just a citizenship and Persian and Azeri and Kurdish are the national identities?
Okay, we've gotten way far afield from what the Donald Trump's strategy is.
Yeah,
but I'm sorry, I'll take you back. But I have to say one thing. Yeah. I just want to say I totally disagree with you. I totally disagree with you. I think there is actually an Israeli identity that is not, but this is for another time. We'll have another discussion of that. I think it's fascinating. Just one sentence and then we'll move on. It's just that these identities, they get created by history, not by anybody's intentions. They just happen. And you get these ridiculous or these crazy contradictions in people. Like, it always cracked me up that Sean Connery, who made his career as in His Majesty's Secret Service, 007, he supported the Scottish Nationalist Party, which was just crazy. Because he was an infantile, he's an actor, which means he's a political adolescent almost by definition. But anyway, and hasn't thought through all the contradictions in his own character. For another time, the Donald Trump doesn't want civil war. He doesn't want a mess. He wants behavior change. He wants no ballistic missiles, no nukes. Number one, that's the most important thing he's always put emphasis on. No ballistic missiles, no support for the proxies. And if he can find somebody on the other side who will give him that or a big chunk of that without having massive disruption, he'll take it. He'll take it, I think. And he also wants he wants to see that there's going to be a regime that's going to treat its own population with less brutality. So he'll take that. That's a great deal from his point of view. He's still looking for the deal.
What is the nature of the deal? I don't know if you didn't define it correctly or that I'm still reeling about your completely misguided comment about Israel. So that's again.
The deal is that he wants the Iranian state to renounce its nuclear program, to drastically reduce its ballistic missile program, to stop supporting proxies, and to treat its own population with less brutality. And
But if it's the same Islamic Republic, how would he be able to tell the difference between that and another con like the
because
genocide?
because they'll make the deal with him. I mean, they'll make the deal. They'll let the inspectors in, and but he can't get what he wants. He can't get what he wants, which is those changes in behavior, which is a massive change in the orientation of the state, and to have stability without dealing with the IRGC, with somebody from the IRGC. He can't. The IRGC is so entrenched in the economy of the country that it's not possible. And so I think we should prepare ourselves for the moment when Trump says, I want to stop the war and I want to negotiate with person X, because I think I can get the deal I've been looking for. This is still, from Donald Trump's point of view, this is still an exercise in coercive diplomacy. This is very, very coercive. And he's decided that he's not going to find the Iranian pragmatist that he's looking for until he wipes out the top 2 or 3 levels of Iranian leadership.
Mhm. And does he have a strategy of telling who that might be? Because my basic instinct is, so long as this core of the Islamic Republic stays, it's like the Communist Republic, the Communist Party of China. It can change the outside orientation. It will not give up its long-term ambitions, and so it would just look for another opportunity somewhere down the road.
Yep, for sure. I mean, look, I'm willing to take a half a loaf. First of all, I think that this is what we're going to get. I don't think we're going to convince Donald Trump to do anything else. So they have some idea. This is what I told you. I talked to a very, very reliable source that told me that they have some ideas about the coalition that could take Iran in another direction. So we need to watch. But these things are very hard to do with a remote control. So once the whole thing starts to crack apart, then all bets are off. It can move in all kinds of directions that no outside player, even no inside player, can control, because there's a lot of forces at work here, including these ethnic forces. That's why I keep going back to them. I think that these ethnic forces are going to play a bigger role in the creation of the new Iran, whatever it looks like, than we are led to believe by the experts.
Mike, we have 2 other aspects of this. We thought we had one, but I think we have 2. One is the Iranian response, which you wanted to talk about, and the other, which is also in your line of expertise, so I'm curious to hear your opinion on subjects which you understand, unlike Israeli ethnicity and nationalism, which is geopolitics. How would this influence?
Did anyone ever tell you that you're an old Jewish woman? You're purveying guilt and being passive aggressive. Yeah. Did your mother do that to you when you call her up? Did she say, "Oh, why are you calling me"?
No, my mother was more aggressive. And I was hoping to be so myself. I didn't think there was anything subtle about my remark, Mike. But if you want to spin it that way, your mother was a much sweeter character, so you're entitled to. Anyway, what I was getting at is to ask, how would this influence the general structure of the geopolitics in the Middle East? So let's take these one by one. This is more or less the stage is yours. One, for the Iranian response and how they're dealing with it so far, and then move to geopolitics.
So the Iranian response is interesting, and I have to say that I'm not surprised, but this is what's interesting. What's interesting is the Iranians are shooting missiles. They are continuing to shoot missiles. You know, I collected here just before we started taping. I went to the Hebrew press. The Israeli press is publishing many more names of people who died than that I've seen in the American press. I was going to say that the American press is at least than I've seen. So the Israeli press is also publishing speculative things, which it's getting from sources in the intelligence in military intelligence, from Iranian media and elsewhere. Here's the Israeli press is saying that 40 top leaders died, and they include Ali Shamkhani, who was the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and senior security advisor to Khamenei. This is a very important guy. Israelis tried to kill him in June and failed. Mohammed Pakpour, who is the commander of the IRGC. Aziz Nasserzadeh, who is the Minister of Defense. Abdurrahim Mousavi, who is the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces. Mohammed Shirazi, who's the head of Khamenei's military bureau. Saleh Assadi, who's the senior intelligence figure. Possibly, they're saying they're not confirmed, but possibly Javad Pour Hussein, who's the head of foreign intelligence. So they on day one, on moment one, the Israelis decapitated Iran in just like they did the last time, and the missiles are still going. So this tells you, and they're shooting a lot of missiles. The Israeli press is a little too jubilant about because there are less missiles coming to Israel than expected, and the ones that are coming in such a way that they're pretty easily intercepted. But I forgot the number. They shot off 139 missiles toward the UAE yesterday. So
Iranian spokespersons, I think from the foreign ministry, said that they are not targeting the Arab countries around them, but the American bases in these countries, which is obviously not true, but that's the way they're trying to portray it.
Yeah, sure. And they are also attacking American bases. And we all saw the video of the naval base in Bahrain that got hit. But the point here, though, is that command and control of the IRGC missile forces is intact and operating, and
but it's also decentralized, right? So this is not as surprising, because the way they've pre-programmed the whole thing is that is that in units have independence and are ordered to shoot whenever they can.
I don't know about that, because these are strategic weapons. You have to, it's one thing if you're a commander with a artillery battery on the battlefield, then you have the right to shoot your artillery at will. But when you're shooting a missile at the capital of the UAE, that probably takes a commander a couple of rungs above you to say go for it. I don't think they're all just running out and and shooting willy-nilly. There's some purpose to what they're doing.
Or there could have been a pre-planned strategy.
Could be, but could be. I doubt it, though. I doubt it. And look, these, I don't think this structure is easily destroyed by the air. Maybe it will be. I doubt it, though, because it's underground. There are some videos out there of the previous head of the IRGC who was killed by the Israelis last time around, of him driving in a tunnel underground, which has, and he's on a road with 2 lanes and traffic, and tons of missiles. These aren't bunkers that the Iranians have. With the help of the North Koreans, they built underground missile complexes. Let's call them missile cities. And these are not easily destroyed by the air. What the Americans and the Israelis seem to be doing is going after the launchers. And that I thought it was interesting, that news item I read you, the Wall Street Journal said that they've taken out 50% of the launchers. That's a big deal, because that will really slow down the missile strikes. But they can't take out the stockpiles. The Iranians have a huge number of missiles in these underground missile cities, and it's going to take a while for the Americans and the Israelis to really degrade the missile units of the IRGC. I don't have any idea how long, and I'm not a military expert, but I can see what has to be done. That has to be done, and I can see that it's a bigger problem than people think. And of course, the whole purpose, there's a strategy behind what the Iranians are doing. They're trying to regionalize the war because they want to bring as much pressure diplomatically on the United States to bring it to an end. They want as many American casualties as they can get, because that will have an impact, they calculate, on American domestic attitudes toward the war, and it will put pressure on Trump to bring it to an end. And they want, most important of all, they want to burn up as many interceptors of the Americans and the Israelis as possible. And that's that these missile launches, we shouldn't get too excited about the interception rates, or fantastic interception rates that we have of knocking down the Iranian missiles, because that's one of the purposes of launching them, is to make us use up our interceptors, because our stockpiles are not endless. They're very expensive and they are limited. And the Iranian strategy is predicated on holding on long enough to force the Americans and the Israelis to burn up more interceptors than they want to. And that also will put pressure on Trump to come to a ceasefire. So the Israelis are trying to get as much done as possible in the window that they have, which is probably a week. And I don't know that that's enough to really take down crack up the regime.
And why do you think the time frame is that small?
Because that's a number.
That's not what Trump is saying. Trump has been talking about longer periods of time.
He doesn't want this. I think politically he doesn't want this to go on too long. He wants, just like remember last time he came in. The same mentality is still there in some form. It's shifted, it's changed, but he last time he came in with the B-2s, he hit the nuclear sites, and he said, "We're done." I remember he went out in great anger, which I think was authentic anger, and he said the Israelis and the Iranians are so stupid, and he cursed at them. And he said, "This has to end now." And he turned back the
last wave of Israeli attacks.
Yeah. So that mentality in some way is still there. The Iranians know that their strategy is designed to exploit it so that they can survive. I would have thought, if you'd have asked me beforehand, if they took out the leadership like they did, all these guys, all the top guys in the IRGC would, how long until how long until they were suing for terms? I would have thought, it was quickly, and it would be quick. And I probably would have thought too that we'd see some clear what do you call it, defections and so on. We haven't seen anything yet. Now, who knows what's going on behind the scenes? Maybe there's tensions and things are cracking up, and wait, because it's only been 1 day. But I'm counseling myself not to get ahead of myself and not to think that because yesterday was a very good day, that means we're going to get everything that we want. And I'm looking at what needs to happen before we get to what we want. The other thing is that clearly, I mean, Khamenei was 86, and the regime clearly, I think, had already taken steps. They knew he could drop dead any day just from natural causes. And they had already taken steps to distribute power around. I think the Israelis knew that. I think that's why they took out all those guys at once. But apparently, there's still a serious structure there. This is my takeaway from day one: is what a fantastic day, but the structure is clearly still there.
That was when the Babylon Bee headline came in that said, "Don't these people now wish that they'd done this meeting on Zoom?"
By the way, I'm really looking forward to getting the story of this surprise attack. When Israel surprised all those guys in their beds the last time around, I thought this can only happen once, and then we all
They will no longer sleep.
we all, well, I didn't think they would all come together in a meeting. There was some kind of fantastic deception operation here. And we don't know the whole of it yet. I want to know, though.
The wildest and then also the wackiest thing I heard is that Mossad dentists have implanted tiny GPSs in their teeth. And so we've been following them via their GPSs in their teeth.
I think that's the kind of story just to sow dissension, make people distrust everyone.
Yeah, though after the Grim Beeper operation, people are inclined to believe more and more things. And one last question about this, Mike: do we have any indication that internal security forces are targeted in an effective way so as to prevent the suppression of demonstrations?
The news this morning, I can't remember if I saw it in the American news or the Hebrew press. The news this morning is that the Israelis are going after that today. There's a very interesting division of labor that the Israeli press is talking a lot about. It's not talked about much in the American press, where the Americans are going after infrastructure, and the Israelis are going after the leadership. The Israelis have perfected they call them tightening the circles between intelligence, observation, and strike. The strike circle. I'm sure it has a name in English, but I don't know what it is. And the Israelis have really perfected. They're very good at it, doing all this in near real time, identifying a target and hitting it. The Americans are doing the long-term infrastructure. The Israelis are going after personnel and
Internal
regime leadership. And today is Besiege and IRGC. We'll see. I started this whole discussion a few minutes ago. I was saying that the IRGC is still clearly intact. We'll see, 2 or 3 days from now if it still looks like it is. I would not want to be on the receiving end of a joint Israeli-American effort to degrade my capabilities.
So now geopolitics, because regardless of what is going to happen to Iran exactly, clearly the Islamic Republic of Iran has been very severely weakened as a regional force. And that leaves the question, Israel is ascendant, obviously, but that leaves the question, what would the new Middle East look like, regardless of the actual regime to take the place of the Khamenei regime?
I'm absolutely certain that that Donald Trump, one of the arguments that convinced Donald Trump to do this is that he can't get anything that he wants in the region as long as Khamenei and his cohort are there enforcing the hard line. He can't. Everyone's trying to wait him out. Hezbollah is not going to disarm in Lebanon because it thinks it can wait him out, and Hamas is not going to disarm in Gaza because it thinks it can wait him out. And he's sending a message to all of them that's not the way this is going to work. We're gonna create a new prosperous Middle East, and you're not going to be part of it with your guns. And so I think we are already in a new middle. I think the minute he took out Khamenei, regardless of we still may have a big mess on our hands in Iran, and it might go on for a long time. We are in a new world now. But really, since the killing of Nasrallah, I think we've been in a new world. But the shape of it is it's continuing to take shape. And that's really this opens up all kinds of potential that that we haven't been talking about. And I can't believe I hadn't thought of this until now, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but possibly even Saudi-Israeli normalization. I have not, I've listened to the Saudis for the last 3 years since October 7th, saying there has to be an irreversible pathway to a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority, and there will be no normalization and so on. That I kind of got used to this new position where the Saudis are not going to normalize with Israel. But when I saw that thing in the Washington Post with Mohammed bin Salman, apparently, if I believe they're reporting it, it kind of made sense to me. Has been counseling Trump to go for it and to take these guys out. Maybe Mohammed bin Salman has some plans that on their that are not on the immediate, not immediately on his agenda, but will be soon. We'll see.
Saudis are also working to strengthen an alliance with Pakistan and Turkey. Is that not may not be possible that they're taking the opposite route?
Yeah, I wouldn't. You can say route or a route. That just identifies you from different parts of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere
in the United States, apparently, all over the place.
I don't think you should read it ideologically. The alignment with the Turks and the Pakistanis. Yeah, they want stability. They want stability and they want economic prosperity. They don't like the Israeli and the UAE policy of fragmenting the countries. That's what they see. They don't like fragmentation. They like centralization, unity, and stability.
But if originally that was conceived in the days where Iran was still a major power in the region, although not the major power that it used to be, then is not that same alignment making sense as a buffer against Israel's rise to hegemony, which the Saudis are not happy about?
I don't know how unhappy they are with Israel's rise. I don't know that. I think the Turks are increasingly defining Israel as a strategic threat. The Saudis, I think are more concerned about the way the UAE and Israel go about projecting their power. They don't like the Israelis in Somaliland. They don't like the UAE's policy in the Sudan, which is to fragment. Which works to fragment Sudan and build up a power base rather than unite it and pass and stabilize it. They don't like the UAE's policy in Yemen, because same thing. They're picking one group and strengthening it rather than trying to settle the whole country. It's a worldview that they have. It's a practical, pragmatic worldview.
So let me quote your colleague Zineb Riboa, who's been writing very interesting stuff about China, and saying, look, for America, this is, at least in part, about China. And if I translate this into a metaphor that Israelis and Americans, I think, can understand, then Iran was the front guard for China in the Middle East, in the same sense that Hezbollah was the front guard against Israel for Iran. So as long as Iran can be a thorn in the side of the United States in the Middle East, it cannot pull up all of its resources to threaten China vis-a-vis the possibility of an attack on Taiwan. Is that a major consideration for the Trump administration?
I'm sure it's very, very much at the forefront of Donald Trump's mind. Absolutely. And he realizes that the Chinese want to pin down American resources in the Middle East. They want to continue to get Iranian oil at like basically half price, which allows them to, China is not well endowed in energy resources, but it can behave on the global stage like a country that is well endowed, because it gets sanctioned Russian oil at half price, or at a 25% discount, and it gets Iranian oil at a 50% discount, and all of a sudden it's as if it has its own oil wells. It has China has refining capabilities, and it markets refined product to countries like Australia, or at least it did a couple of years ago when I looked into this. Australia, which is well endowed, is buying refined products from China, which is not well endowed. This is crazy. So Trump wants to bring all of this in, just like with Maduro in Venezuela. He wants to take advantage of the resource-rich position of the United States in order to shift the balance with the Chinese. He's aware that the Chinese are supplying targeting data to the Houthis. He's aware that there are only two entities in the world that have anti-ship ballistic missiles. That's the Chinese and the Houthis, and that all of the Houthi the Houthi attacks on global shipping and on the American Navy are all for China, a way of collecting data about how the United States fights against such an adversary. An anti-ship ballistic missile, by the way, has one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to shoot at American aircraft carriers when they're maneuvering in a confined airspace, confined waterway. And so Trump is aware of all this, and he wants to basically, without saying it, he wants to go back to the Carter Doctrine, which is to treat the Persian Gulf as an American lake.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mike, I have a feeling that my report on the Israeli deep state, which is very interesting, by the way, amazing new developments, is not, it's not the right place for it. We can save it for a next episode, and we can repeat, although not expect our listeners to believe that soon we will be on a more regular schedule. But if you don't believe that, you can just ignore that comment, and we'll surprise you later on. So unless we want to comment anything else about the war, we can move to the dumb mistake.
Okay, what's your dumb mistake?
Oh, you want to start with me? My dumb mistake is Matt Walsh, who wrote a tweet in which he claims not to understand why the war is an interest of the United States. And he says as follows: It's troubling that the arguments we're hearing for this war in Iran, including from Trump himself, seem to revolve primarily around bringing freedom to the Iranian people. As Americans, the freedom of Iranians is not our responsibility. If a single American life is lost in the service of that goal, it will be a travesty. To which I responded, Mike, and I think it was my most successful English tweet ever. You don't understand why nuclear Iran is a danger to America's interests? That's a bit like not knowing what a woman is, Matt. Is it not?
I didn't see it. I want to retweet that right away.
I'll send it to you. But what I wanted to point out is that the isolationists, there was a more intelligent tweet by Paul Rand, who is generally a very decent guy. But all these isolationists who are not understanding what the American interest is in a war with Iran, I don't know if they feign innocence or if they have become so geopolitically stupid that they don't understand what the basic interests of the United States are. I won't have time to read it, but let me also point out that this tweet, Lee Smith, our friend, retweeted it with a very convincing and very sharp 2-paragraph argument about how a nuclear Iran is a direct danger to the whole world order, to the world economy, and to the security of Americans worldwide. So I consider Matt Walsh to. By the way, the movie that he did on What Is a Woman, I thought was great. His critique of the woke is great, but it comes with a complete misunderstanding of politics. Paul Rand quoted the famous quote from John Adams, who said that Americans shouldn't go around the world searching for monsters to slay. But I think all these people don't realize how intimate and small the world has become, and how direct an Iranian nuclear program is a threat to American interests.
I totally agree with you. I think I may write something about this actually. I don't look. There's a degree of dishonesty or disingenuousness in what Walsh wrote, because Donald Trump made an 8-minute video yesterday explaining why he was doing this, and the freedom for the Iranian people was a small part of it. So to say that I don't hear what's the argument? It's Trump has been making this argument. He campaigned on this in 2016. He campaigned on it in 2020, and he campaigned on it in 2024.
And now they suddenly don't understand.
Where is this coming from? I don't know. So yeah. So I do think there's a bit of ignorance involved. That these are people who have fantastic rhetorical gifts. They're good broadcasters, and they've been focusing on a lot of domestic stuff. They've been fighting the culture war domestically and poking holes in democratic arguments, but they haven't spent 5 minutes thinking about foreign policy in their lives. But all of a sudden, it's a big issue, and it's the tyranny of those jobs is that you have to have an opinion on whatever's in the news. Yeah. You can't go before the big thing is today is the war in Iran. You can't go and say, you know what, I don't know shit about this topic, so I'm not going to talk about it. You have to have an opinion. So, but there's a very simple calculation they're making, which is also cynical and I think short-sighted in the end. Well, I don't know. Maybe they know where their bread is buttered, but their audience, there's a part of their audience that is marching in lockstep behind Tucker Carlson, and they want the audience. They don't want their revenue depends on this direct subscriber model. and they want the numbers, and so
No.
they're kind of they're hedging and cutting the distance halfway between where Trump is and where Tucker Carlson is. It's as simple as that. That's the number one reason why they're doing what they're doing.
I don't want to be too predictable, so I didn't pick up Tucker Carlson, but I listened to Tucker Carlson's take on the war, and that is so extremely stupid. The argument is that this is a war to make Israel hegemonic in the Middle East, so America is dragged once again by Israel into a war. But Israel has a secret aim, and that is to weaken America in order to strengthen its bond with America's competitor, which in his mind is India. This is why Modi was here in Israel just before the war. And you hear this guy talking seriously about this idiocy and how the war, Israel, it's designed by Israel to weaken its own ally. And I just want to quote our friend Dan Shiftan, who had, I think, a brilliant take on that in these arguments. And he says, imagine a world with three Israels. Imagine that you had an Israel near Venezuela and another Israel near Taiwan. Wouldn't that completely change the strategic posture of America in the world? So that's it for my stupid take. I hope yours is not Tucker Carlson.
No, it's not. But I just had a thought about Tucker Carlson. If you let me share it. I mean, isn't it true that the Jews control the media?
At least you didn't say it's the Israeli nation that controls the media.
God,
Yeah.
I wounded you, did I? I really wounded you. I can't wait to have this argument.
That is not, you don't know, but this is my
I understand.
my main ideological claim about the structure of identity in this country. So if you ran with your little, mosquitoes bite, you've just ran into a furious green Hulk. But leave that on the side and just remember not to bite the green Hulk again. What is your take on something you do know?
I can't wait to have this argument with you. It's going to be fun. I'm just glad it's going to be on Zoom. No, you agree? Do you agree with me that the Jews control the media, right?
Oh yes, of course they do. At least the Jews control this media, Mike.
Yeah, they certainly do. And Tucker Carlson is big in the media, right?
Yeah.
So we can only draw one conclusion.
Oh my God, he's an agent of the Jews.
Yeah, of course he is, and that's why he's trying to weaken Donald Trump and weaken America. Because
did you see the Babylon Bee about his visit to Israel? Tucker Carlson came back saying Israel is controlled by Jews. This is why the Star of David is everywhere here.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
Why do you think it's everywhere in Israel? Let's finish with readers' comments, which were this stuff.
What about my?
Your dumbest take. Yeah, I thought you said the dumbest thing already on this show.
No. So this is my dumbest take.
I'll read it for people who are just listening to us. It's Saminai, and the date is the 10th of October 23, 3 days after the massacre. Oh, Mike, so take it, move the camera a bit, take it, bring it back. Heads of the Zionist regime. No, you read it.
I lost it now. So no, we're so. It says heads of the Zionist regime. This is on the 10th of October, 2023. Heads of the Zionist regime and their backers should know that the massacre and mass murder of the people of Gaza will cause a larger calamity to come upon them. So they've called down hell on themselves or death.
My response to this, and you sent it to me before the show, was that where is it now? Was that if you took out the last four words, it would have made the tweet prescient. Heads of the Zionist regime and their backers should know that the massacre and mass murder of people of Gaza will cause a larger calamity. Period. He didn't say on who. I mean, you did, but if he wouldn't, you know what I'm saying. Tov, anyway, readers' comments.
So the readers' comments are, as you said, very sweet. The main one I had was actually asking that we talk about the UAE and Saudi Arabia. We kind of did that already, but that by the way was from Isla Maverbook. What does that mean? Isla Maverbook. It's Isla Maverbook. Yeah, Isla Maverbook. Was Isla a name? Anyway. Anyway, he or she wanted to talk about that. We talked about it. There's more to be said, but I think we covered it already. There's someone named Rosemary Fisk, Gotti, and she said, I fell in love with Gotti after the first episode. You know, you had us away with the ladies.
I think you quoted this one. I think you quoted this one.
No,
This is a different one. In love with me every episode?
Was it her before? I don't think it was her. Thanks for keeping your word on the episode timing. We didn't do it this time, though, did we? It was a pleasant surprise this morning. Okay, so Rosemary, I want you to know, though, you are probably over 35, and God is only...
You quoted this with this same joke, Mike, last time.
Okay. I can make the same joke over and over again.
Make it over. Well, please. So,
Okay, then we have... sorry, what were you going to say?
just tell her to get in touch with me. That's all. Well, what's the problem?
Okay, you can get in touch with her on the comments. I can't believe we turned this into the Gotti dating site now. Okay. I did that. I probably didn't use that. But yeah. By the way, I don't know if I can tell this story. I just put it this way. I know a guy.
Never mind who.
Never mind who did a podcast with his daughter. And the whole thing was that he used to joke with his daughter that this is going to be your shidduch podcast. You know, we're going to find you a husband this way, and it worked. It worked. And they just got. I won't go into any more details. I don't know if it's public or not, but anyway, they're over the moon. They found a lovely guy through the podcast, and she's married now.
We did the same thing when we started this podcast. I was married, and we managed to get me divorced. You know that for a long time. No, I love my ex-wife dearly. She's an amazing person. But for the longest time, I didn't have this little studio in the living room with my bookshelf behind me. I had the laundry cabinet behind me, and it was in the corridor. And if my wife was in the room, she couldn't get to the bathroom. She was trapped. Our podcast, especially when it ran longer than an hour, would cause major domestic turmoil because my wife couldn't empty her bladder for hours because you were going on about Turkey or Azerbaijan. And I tried to say it's Mike. And she said, it's both of you. And see where it goes now.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that I ruined your marriage. I apologize. I had no idea. Apology. Did I sound a little bit insincere when I said I was sorry?
No.
That's because
No.
I was a little insincere because I really I don't care. Okay.
Wait. You're trying to portray yourself as a cynical guy. Let me tell you, dear listeners and viewers, when I divorced, I was on the phone with Mike for hours and he consoled me. And that was a very friendly and touchy and
why are you telling
kind thing to do? Because I want people to know that your outside abrasive manner is just a way to disguise your sensitive Gina or self.
We're moving on now. I'm not sensitive. I'm strong and silent. Okay. Alan Led Zepp. Okay. Alan Led Zepp. Okay. He said, Mike, your recent article in Tablet is one of the best I've ever read on any subject. Absolute superb. Thank you. Okay, Alan. Thank you. I had to read that just to make Gotti feel jealous.
Did I mention also a brittle ego?
Alan, I have a question for you. Does anyone remember laughter? Okay. That's for Alan. I think I asked that on this podcast before.
I don't think I got the.
Yeah, it's because you're not an American or a Brit of a certain age
Okay.
who listened to Led Zeppelin.
What else can we learn from our viewers before we depart?
I don't know if we can learn from them, but we can ask them to like us, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can leave a nice comment like Alan leads up, or you can read nasty comments. We like them all because they fool the algorithm, and we are here to game the algorithm. That's our purpose.
So can't you read like one nasty comment so as to encourage them to write them?
You know what? There were very few this time. This episode, the previous episode, I was shocked. It was the most viewed episode we ever had, even more than your interview with Netanyahu. It was full of very positive comments. And this was after we had a long period of a long hiatus. So I expected our numbers to drop, but we had very high numbers. I don't know why. But anyway, thank you, viewers. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So in conclusion, let me just say that we started this podcast in a war that we thought would be short. Yeah, Mike, what do you want to say?
There was I'm sorry, there was a negative comment. There was I remember there were a couple of negative comments. A few people said that they politely said that I had my head up my ass about Persians and minorities in Iran.
Oh,
And so I didn't shift one iota on this one.
Yeah. So it begins with being wrong about Iran and it ends with being wrong about Israel. You see how quickly it deteriorates? To those of you who are listening on audio, Mike is feigning a huge, unconvincing yawn. What I wanted to say in a more serious vein is that we started this podcast in the heat of a war on the second week of the Iron Swords War. None of us could have predicted the amazing, frightening, exhilarating things that have transpired since. Now we're in a new war, and I think in a completely new world, which we could not imagine back then when we started. So stay with us because the world can change even further. That's it from us for today, and we will hopefully see you within the month of March at the very least, and probably even sooner.
Why don't we say we'll be back in a week? Let's be back in a week.
We'll be back with you next week. And until then, keep safe.